Good morning, everyone. My name is Craig Sipes, and I am the STEAM coordinator for Los Angeles Unified School District, Local District East. And I'm really excited to be here with you today. Thank you for joining us. We are on our first virtual field trip for the Global Warming STEM Venture in Southgate. And I just wanted to introduce you to sort of what we're here for, what we're doing, and then how we're going to move forward and engage in thinking about the environment, thinking about the earth, and thinking about our place in the earth, and what agency we have, what we can do about things, what is it that we can actually do about things. So with us today, we've got some fantastic guest. Her name is Maria Adame. She is from Generation Earth at the Tree People, and she's going to take you on a virtual field trip. But before we start that, Maria's ready to go. Before we start that, then I'm just going to kind of run through a little bit about what it is that we're going to be doing. So I'm gonna show you. Let's see. So here, we've got several field trips coming your way. So let's look at them. So here's the list of field trips. Okay, so today is June 30. We've got Generation Earth at the Tree People. Then next, Generation Earth at Tree People are going to come back tomorrow for part 2 of this field trip. Then on July 7, we have Aquarium of the Pacific. July 8, California Science Center. July 14, Aquarium of the Pacific. And then July 15, the USC Sea Grant from the University of California. So today, once again, is Generation Earth at Tree People. If you would like to ask a question, hopefully you have this document that you're seeing in front of you, and you can click up in the corner where it says Q&A link. If you click up in the corner, then you can submit questions, and Maria will respond to your questions. So go ahead and send those questions. You can start sending questions now, and at different times in the field trip, then Maria's going to pause and she's going to ask you if you have any questions, and that's going to be a definite opportunity to ask any questions that you have, but also just send them in any time that you like. Okay, so today Generation Earth at the Tree People, they are going to take us on a virtual field trip. And the guiding question for today is, how does water move through our city, and why does that matter? So with that, I would like to introduce you to Maria Adame, who's going to take it away. Hi, Maria.
Hello, Craig. Good morning, everyone. As Craig just mentioned, my name is Maria Adame. I am here from Generation Earth / Tree People. That relationship is a little confusing, but all you need to know is I'm here from Generation Earth and Tree People, okay? And what we're going to be talking about today, let me share my screen really quickly with you all. Is how does water move through our city, and why does that matter? Okay, and we're going to have some challenge questions, these 4 challenge questions. You don't have to write them down or anything like that. They're going to be in my slides, so you have those with you, but we're going to go over them anyway. The first question is, how does water move through a natural watershed? The second question is, how does water move through an urban watershed? Third question, what is water pollution and what causes it? And the last question is, what can we do at home to prevent water pollution? Okay, so as my videos play, keep the question above the video in mind, and we're going to see if we can try to answer those by the end. The first question, how does water move through a watershed? Whoops, sorry about that. Let's play this video.
Hi everyone, I'm Maria. Welcome to Tree People. Today we're going to be talking about how water moves in nature versus how it moves through our cities. Follow me. Tree People, we have what we like to call the mountain fountain. And the reason we have this mountain fountain is because we like to talk about the water cycle. In the water cycle, when it rains, that's called precipitation. And that precipitation is going to hit the highest points first. In nature, the highest points are the mountains. You guessed it right. Yes, so once the water hits the mountains, if this were on, you'd be able to see that the water is going to slide off in rivers and streams, and it's going to run to the nearest body of water. Typically, the nearest body of water tends to be an ocean or a lake, but it can also be bodies of water that are about 20 to 30 feet underground. Those bodies of water are called aquifers. Aquifers are kind of like pools, and all of the water that rains and it hits open soil trickles down through the dirt and the rocks and the leaves, and it ends up going into those aquifers where it stays, sometimes for millions of years. And we can take that water and drink it.
Okay, so that's the very first part of the video, so it's only meant to answer that question. How does water move through a natural watershed? If any of you have questions regarding how water moves through a natural watershed, feel free to put those in the chat, and I'll do my best to answer as many of them as I can. Do we have any questions coming in, Craig?
Hi, Maria. Yeah, we've got some questions. So, one question from Luce from Southeast is asking about how about volcanoes? Do volcanoes affect the climate?
Volcanoes do affect the climate, and they are also part of a watershed. Watershed sounds kind of like it would be a verb, but it's actually not something that happens. It's the land through which the land runs. So just like mountains, volcanoes are some of the highest points we have. So the water that rains, or that precipitation that we discussed in the video, would hit the volcanoes first, slide off of them in rivers and streams, and essentially make its way to the nearest body of water. So yeah, volcanoes can be a part of the watershed, the natural watershed.
Amber from Southgate Middle asked, does water pollution cause carbon dioxide?
Not as far as I know. Carbon dioxide is air pollution, but some of the things that cause water pollution also do cause CO2 emissions, like when we burn motor oil. A little later on in my video, you'll be able to see how motor oil pollutes our oceans, but the motor oil, while it's in our cars and our cars are using it, it does get burnt up, and it does end up becoming an emission that ends up in our air. So while it doesn't directly create CO2 in our waters, it does create CO2 in our air.
How about this question from Debbie at Southeast? Why do people litter if they know about global warming?
A lot of people litter even though they know about global warming, because sometimes it's not really all that easy to make the connection, right? sometimes people believe that when they throw a wrapper on the ground, it's going to go into a storm drain, and that there is a filtration system that keeps all of the stuff that we throw on the ground from actually entering the ocean. But that's not true. While there are some, I guess I would call them grates that try to keep that trash out, what happens is that trash, I don't know if you all can see, but we're going to pretend that these are the grates in the storm drain. If my other hand is a piece of paper, it's going to get trapped there until eventually the water, which is a really strong force, pushes that piece of trash through the grate regardless, right? So that's the connection a lot of people don't make, but I'm glad that you're making it.
Thank you, Maria. And I think we're ready to go.
Okay, so the next question we have here is, how does water move through an urban watershed?
Now let's take a look and see how water moves through our city. Follow me. This here to my left is the Urban Urgency's home. This is meant to show us how we waste water at home typically. As you can see, this house has a lawn with grass, and it also has a rose bush. These plants need water to grow. But what many of you might not know is that grass is actually native to Europe. That means that it's actually originally from there. If I say I'm a California native, that means I was born here. So this grass has gotten used to getting watered almost every day, because that's about how often it rains in Europe. Here in Southern California, it doesn't really rain that often. Definitely not every day. So we actually have to install sprinklers to keep our grass nice and green and give it that pretend rain that it needs. So I'm going to turn on these sprinklers and show you all. These sprinklers here are called circle sprinklers because they spray water in a circle, right? But let's take a look at the circle around the sprinkler, and let's think of it as a pizza, okay? With two slices, a cement slice and a grass slice. The cement slice makes up about 75% of this pizza, while the grass slice only makes up about 25% or a fourth of the pizza. So what that means is that we're actually wasting about 75% of the water that leaves these sprinklers. That's more than half, right? That's almost all of the water. We don't want that, right? And we actually have to pay for that water. Younger kids might not be aware of this because parents pay the water bill, but water is actually pretty expensive. And the reason that it's so expensive is because it's not really ours. It doesn't rain enough to sustain the more than 10 million people that live in LA County. So what we actually have to do is bring that water from different areas, like the Colorado River, the Sacramento-San Joaquin River Delta, and Owens Lake, through aqueducts. That means we have to pay for shipping and handling too. And it makes our water pretty pricey, but we do get free water every once in a while when it rains. Believe it or not, I can make it rain too. When it rains, the water is going to move through our cities in the exact same way that it moves in the natural watershed. Because this is a watershed too. It's an urban watershed. So again, the water is going to fall from the clouds, precipitation. And it's going to hit the highest points first, except in the cities, the highest points aren't mountains, but are rooftops. The water is going to hit the rooftop, slide off through the side, through the gutter, down into our driveway, where it's going to take all of this natural waste from our plants into the storm drain.
Okay, so now I want to ask you all if you have any questions regarding how water moves through the urban watershed. Type those in the chat box, please and thank you.
All right, so we've got one question here, Maria from Alejandra in Southgate Middle School. So she's asking, how do we prevent global warming?
Well, there's so many things that you can do to prevent global warming. In a bit, you'll be able to see one of the easiest ways that you can prevent water pollution from happening in your area, right, in your city. But it's not just water pollution, it's literally almost in everything that you can do. It's even as easy as doing advocacy. And advocacy just means that you're spreading the word, right? So if you know that throwing trash on the ground creates water pollution, you can help prevent global warming by telling your friend the next time you see that they're going to throw the wrapper on the ground, hey, that creates water pollution. How about you put that in your pocket and save it for the trash when you get home, right? That's already helping in a really big way, even though we might not automatically create those connections.
Thank you. And Eros from Bryson Elementary asks, is it possible to save rainwater?
It is possible to save rainwater, and we'll see how to do that in one of my next videos.
Great, let's see it.
All right, well, let's move on to the next one.
But that's not the only thing it's going to take. I know we've all been there. I've been there too. When I used to walk home from school, I would, pull out my fruit roll-up and my stacky bag, and I would snack as I walked home. And when I was done with it, I would think, well, I don't really want to carry this, so, right? And what I didn't understand then is that the next time it rained, the water was actually going to end up pushing the wrappers I had thrown on the ground into the storm drain. And this is a slow process, but eventually you'll be able to see, and I'll help it out a bit, that the wrapper has now gone into the storm drain. The storm drain is going to redirect that trash into the LA River, the channelized LA River, right? Because it's got concrete all around it. Eventually, we'll see that wrapper come out the other side. And if we were to get enough rain, that wrapper would actually end up in the ocean. Let's take a look. Our model watershed garden has two model oceans. One that's supposed to represent the way our oceans should look, and another one that represents the way our oceans do look. Take a look at these. Which of these do you think represents the way the natural ocean should look? If your guess is the bigger one, you are absolutely right. This nice, beautiful blue ocean with a little bit of natural waste is what our oceans should look like. But unfortunately, that's how our oceans actually look, right? I see a red Solo cup in there, some bottles, a lot of bottles. I see that wrapper I threw on the ground. I see some natural waste. What else do I see in there? It looks like a snack package. Oh, I see so many things. A coffee lid, a coffee cup, all of that stuff. And guess what? The waste that ends up in the ocean isn't just the stuff that we can see, it's the stuff we can't see too, right? If you've ever gone out to walk your dog and he decides to use the bathroom, one or two, when it rains, that's gonna end up in the ocean too, right? And it's not just pet waste, it's motor oil, it's cigarette butts, it's, I don't know, the puke someone left on the side of the street, right? All of that stuff ends up in the ocean. And one single gallon of motor oil can contaminate up to 1 million gallons of ocean water. That is a lot of contamination, right? So we have to be really mindful of making sure that our water doesn't run all over the pavement that we've put everywhere in the city, so that it doesn't take all of those contaminants with it, right? Because, raise your hand if you think sharks are really awesome. Jellyfish, right? Starfish, seahorses, dolphins, whales, you name it. All of that stuff, all those animals, they have to live in that dirty ocean, right? Yeah, and if you like to eat fish, guess where the fish that you like to eat lives? And guess what that fish is eating? And guess what you're eating? Right? Yeah. So it's really important that we think of ways to make sure that our water doesn't become stormwater runoff and carry those pollutants into the ocean.
And now, if we have any questions regarding how water pollution is created and why that's so important that we don't create it, please ask those now.
Yeah, so we have a question from Southgate Middle School. So how is it that the water comes in and goes through the watershed? How is it kept clean and taken care of so it doesn't get contaminated?
So in the natural watershed, I like to imagine as nature being perfect, because when the dinosaurs exist, humans didn't, right? So the water had to find a way to clean itself and to collect itself without our help. Now, that cleaning process happens actually through rocks. Rocks act kind of like filters. Bioswales, which you'll be able to see in a little bit, are just a bunch of rocks that you lay over the ground when you try to collect rainwater. So it kind of pushes the leaves out and only the water can filter through, because the water there, it's the smartest particle, right? So it's going to keep all the dirt out. It's going to keep all the rocks out, all the sticks and all of the leaves too, letting only the water trickle through. So that's how the cleaning process happens in nature. And in the city, it doesn't happen that way because we have concrete, and the concrete is not permeable. Permeable is just a really big word that means that it doesn't absorb it, right? So because the concrete doesn't absorb the water, it just runs off of the concrete, taking all of the trash with it. And we do have, sanitary sewers that take our dirty water into a treatment plant where it can get cleaned. But unfortunately, if we redirected all of the rainwater that lands on our ground in our city, it would be impossible to capture all of that water and clean it. 1 inch of rain for like a solid hour creates 3.8 billion gallons of stormwater runoff. So that's a lot of water. That's 1 inch of rain, right? Sometimes we get up to 12. So what we want to keep in mind is it's almost impossible to clean all of that water. So what we want to do is make sure that we don't throw our trash on the ground, or that we find ways to keep the water from running on the concrete and taking that trash with it. And that's what we're going to look at in a little bit.
Another question from Eros and Bryson says, how can we clean the water before it goes to the ocean?
So like I mentioned, the treatment facilities would do that. And what we can do, our part, would be to make sure that we're not throwing that trash on the ground and making sure that we essentially sink the water into the ground before it gets to those impervious surfaces like the concrete and the roads, right?
And Sebastian at Southgate Middle School says, how do rocks act as filters?
I wish I had a better visual to show you all, because it's kind of hard to explain with words, but let me think. Okay, so if you have a rock that's the size of my fist, right? And then you have a piece of paper that's this big, and you have a bunch of rocks that are the size of my fist, this piece of paper is bigger than that, right? So it's not going to go through all of those rocks. It would have to be something that's way smaller to fit into the cracks of the rocks in order to go through. So the rocks kind of create a filter in the sense that it keeps all of the trash out, and it only lets the really small stuff go through. And of course, that does include dirt, right? Dirt isn't isn't bigger than those rocks. But essentially what happens is deep down into the ground, the rocks get smaller and smaller and smaller, and they create that filtration system where eventually when it gets to the very bottom of the ground that we have, it's going to filter out that tiniest thing. So if you were to dig really deep into the ground and find water underground, that's actually drinkable, clean water.
And so then that brings us to our next question. Yahira from Southgate Middle School says, can we cook, bathe, or wash with rainwater if we collect it?
Well, not necessarily, because it doesn't go through that filtration system of 30 feet of ground, right? The ground is what cleans the water. But if we just put a bucket on the corner of our house, it's not really getting that, I guess, filtration system that the ground does. So you can use that water for certain things, but not things like drinking, cooking, bathing, or anything like that. You can use that water to flush your toilet, right? Because we don't need clean water for that. And you can also use it to water your plants, because they have those filtration systems. By the time it reaches their roots, the water is going to be nice and clean. So there are things that you can do with that water. Unfortunately, it's just not cooking or bathing in it.
So we want to filter the rainwater before we use it for those sorts of things.
Yes.
And so then, so Maria from Southeast brings us back to our question here. So how does water move through our city, and why does that matter? She really wants to get into the meat of this.
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, the reason water moves through our cities from a high point to the low point, right? So from the mountains to the oceans. And what's important about that to know is that there's so many things in between the mountains and the ocean. And it's important to know that, because essentially that's going to help us figure out the point or why water pollution happens, right? Because there's everything in between that the water is taking with it. So that's that. And that's also the way it moves through our urban watershed. But the reason that water pollution is so important is, like I said, when you think about fish, if you like eating seafood, they're eating microplastics from all of the broken down plastics in the ocean, and then you're eating that fish, and then you have microplastics in your stomach, right? And it's not healthy for anyone. It's not healthy for the planet, it's not healthy for the animals, and it's definitely not healthy for us. So we need to find ways to learn about how to fix these problems, and some of the ways that we can fix them are so easy we don't even think about them, right? It's just keeping your trash in your pocket, your backpack, making sure that you hold on to it until you find a trash can, and also redirecting water, which is what we're going to learn about next.
That sounds good. Let's go.
All right.
With it. And I want to show you all how to do that. So let's take a look at our sustainable solutions zone, which provides sustainable solutions. I'm going to make it rain one more time. This time, I'm not going to say anything. We're just going to take a look for a couple of minutes and see what happens to the water that hits this high point. As you can see, the water is going 3 places. The first place the water is going is this. This is called a rain chain. Have you ever belly flopped into a pool? Every time I have students up here at Tree People, they never fail to jump in and say, "Ow, that hurts." And the reason belly flops hurt so much, and undoubtedly, is because you're falling from really high up, really fast, and you don't really give the water time to open up and catch you. right? Well, if we didn't have the rain chain, that's exactly what would happen to the water. It would run off to the corner and it would belly flop onto the ground, right? It's going to compact the ground and it's not really going to be able to absorb. It's going to end up running off and taking all of those pollutants and contaminants with it. If we have this rain chain here, this is the equivalent of a ladder on the side of your pool. It's going to help the water trickle down softly and smoothly so the ground can absorb it. And it's essentially going to water all of the plants that we have here, but also help it become groundwater and find those aquifers, right? The second place that the water is going is this rain barrel here. This is a 60-gallon rain barrel. This gutter here redirects the water into the rain barrel where it's going to stay collected until I'm ready to use it to water my plants, right? That's why we have these hoses attached to the rain barrel. This rain barrel can be filled with 1 inch of rain for a solid hour. And it's gonna take me about 6 months to use up all of the water in the 60-gallon rain barrel if the plants in my garden are all native plants, right? So think about all the water you'd be saving and all of the money you'd be saving too. And the last place the water is going is the drain, the gutter on the side of the house that is exiting into a bioswale. That bioswale is going to clean all of the leaves, sticks and rocks that come along with the water that's running off of our rooftops, and it's going to help sink that water into the ground. It's also going to go to the trees that you all see here, right? But this is not only helping us put water into the ground, but it's helping us save those contaminants from ending up in our ocean water. If you take a look at the storm drain right over there, you can see that it is dry, right? That means that we're killing 2 birds with 1 stone. We're getting water into the ground and we're preventing trash and contaminants from ending up in our ocean. Now, that tunnel that I first walked through, that is what the gutters and sewage system look like underground. Except the real sewage pipes that help carry all of that rainwater and trash into the ocean are actually about 30 times bigger than that. So they're huge, right? And that's just something to think about. Now, that concludes our watershed garden tour. And currently, because of the global pandemic we have on our hands, our park is unfortunately not open, but I want to invite you all to come and visit us and bring your students, bring your family, bring your parents too, and give them a tour of everything that you just learned today. Thank you for listening.
And questions?
So let's see. So Carolyn from Southgate says, how can we begin to prevent water pollution from our homes and schools?
So that's actually a really good idea. Part of my job is to help students find ways to do that in their school. So if you want to stop, if you want to find a way to stop water pollution from happening on your school campus, then you can reach out to us at Generation Earth, and we have toolkits where we help you figure out how to plant native plants at your school, how to get a rain barrel if you want to start collecting water on campus, all that stuff. We can do that with you. And like I said, you can help by just telling people that you know the information that you learned today, because a lot of people don't make these connections and they don't know, right, that water pollution can be prevented if you don't throw your trash on the ground or if you redirect your water so it doesn't run off on the concrete. So sharing that information is a really good way to help too.
Thank you. And Eros from Bryson has another question for us. Eros is asking a DIY question. So how can I build my own rain collector?
Ooh, I love doing DIY rain chains. And we're going to be working on uploading a DIY rain chain tutorial this week, actually. So you can check out our Tree People website for that. But the best thing that comes to my mind right off the top of my head is you can reduce, reuse, recycle old water bottles, right? Cutting them in half, making a little hole, getting a rope, tie some knots, run a water bottle every time you make a knot, put a water bottle in, make another knot, put a water bottle in, paint it, make it pretty, add glitter. That's what I would do. And hang it on the corner of your house and you're good to go.
And Genesis from Southeast Middle School really wants to know, so Los Angeles is a dry area. Is there anything that we can do to actually get more than the amount of rain that we get each year?
Well, it is a Mediterranean climate, so that means that we have really long, dry summers and really short, wet winters. So the best thing to do is to, well, conserve the water that you're using. You know, make sure that you turn the faucet off while you're brushing your teeth, washing your hands, and doing all that good stuff. But also getting a rain barrel, or even just putting a bucket when you're waiting for the water to warm up before you shower. Just put a bucket, right, in front of the faucet and let that water run. And then you have one bucket, you're saving one bucket. And it may not seem like a lot, but one bucket is 5 gallons, right? And that's already 5 gallons of water that you're saving. And it's baby steps like that. If we all did that, right, that'd be a lot of water.
Alan from Southeast Middle School says, why does water go into sewers anyways?
Water goes into sewers actually because, and I wish I had more images to show you all, but this is something you can easily Google. Before we had the flood control system, which is what the sewage system is called, we actually had a lot of flooding. There was a huge flood in, I believe it was 1938 here in LA, where the LA River flooded hugely, and it destroyed like thousands of homes, and a bunch of people died too. And when we had those giant floods happening where a lot of people would lose their homes, we kind of thought, well, we need to come up with a better way to help the water flow underground so it's not flowing above ground and taking all of our belongings and of course our homes with it.
So Maria from Southeast asked about rainwater being cleaner than filtered water, and well, you would want to filter your rainwater. So it depends on your filtration system, but filtered is better than non-filtered for sure. The last question I think that we'll wrap up with here is from Sophia at Southgate Middle School. Would it help if we have even more trash cans in our community? So she's asking an advocacy question here.
Yeah, it actually would help. I don't know if you've been to like an amusement park, but I remember the first time I went to Disneyland in like middle school, I noticed that there was a trash can every 26 feet in every direction. And I remember reading a sign that said, the longest a person is willing to walk with trash in their hand is 26 steps. So every 26 steps, we've added a trash can, right? So yeah, adding more trash cans and making them more readily available to people would help decrease the amount of water pollution that we have. And of course, littering. And that's a great project that you and your classroom could take on. And like I said, I'd be happy to help.
Any last things, Maria?
Just that if you are interested in starting an eco club or taking on one of these things that we learned about today, I and my team would be more than happy to help you all start an eco club, find a way to fundraise for trash cans so you can have them at your school, or help you get a rain barrel. That's what we're here to do, you know. And I think Kenny's going to be on tomorrow. Kenny is awesome, and I know you guys are going to enjoy him so very, very much. I'm so excited for you all to meet him. He's great.
Maria Adame, thank you so much for taking your time to be with us here today. We really appreciate you. And we know that we are very fortunate that you're going to come back for a field trip with us again. That's going to be with another group, but thank you so much for being with us here today. And if I could take the screen back, I'm going to show a couple images here. Thank you very much. So students, thank you so much for being here on the field trip today. You have before you have your science, your student journal for global warming. And today, so this is what the cover looks like. If you haven't yet received this from your teacher, don't worry, you will. And so the purpose of this is to keep track of the learning here. So here you will have all of the links to all of the field trips, and included after that, you will have some pages where you can reflect on your learning and think about where you've gone today in this virtual space and how this connects to your life. So here, the guiding question for the field trip today was, how does water move through our city and why does that matter? Once again, this was presented by Maria Adame from Generation Earth at the Tree People. And so we're going to ask you to think about this. What 3 interesting things have you learned? I know it's hard to limit it to 3, but what 3 interesting things have you learned today? And then what is your answer to the VFT question, the virtual field trip question? What is your answer to that question? The question once again is, how does water move through our city? And why does that matter? Why does that matter? And then something that's crucial, something that we need to do more of as a people, is as a community, is to ask more questions. So ask those questions. What questions are sparked from today? So what are 2 questions or wonderings that have been sparked by this virtual field trip? So then you're going to add that into that last box. So thank you, everyone. Thank you for being with us here on this field trip today. And we really appreciate your time. We appreciate your thoughtfulness, and your questions were great. Keep them coming. We will see you again tomorrow. Bye-bye.